Hello everyone， 那我们今天有个非常特别的 announcement， 跟我们很久的朋友都知道，我们已经策划很久要做这个订阅制的内容。And we're so excited to tell you that it is coming your way. 那如果你有兴趣的话，请到我们 show notes 当中的连结填写一些简单的资料，我们那边还有更多的 information。那当然这次的活动呢，我们也有设计精美的小礼物要送给大家哦。那只送不卖，只有60份，送完为止。如果你想要知道这小礼物是什么呢，也请到我们的连结。So I cannot wait to share this with you guys. 那我们现在就回到今天的单元咯。Welcome back to work, everyone. 那今天就让我跟 Nick 来分享我们非常喜欢的 quotes， 来开启大家的一天。Hello， 欢迎来到 Executive Plus 主管与沟通力的 podcast. I'm Sherry, an educator, certified coach, and style enthusiast. 我相信专业有效的沟通是语言跟逻辑的完美结合。
And I'm Nick, a startup consultant, corporate trainer, and late-night gaming junkie. I believe great communication requires the right mindset and solid frameworks.
我们希望带给大家职场英语的技能、跨文化沟通技巧与其他能帮助您成为出色领导者的工具。
Join us each week as we share our experience, research, and methodologies to take your communication and language skills from good to great. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Executive Plus podcast. We wanted to start this year off right. So while everyone's thinking of the resolutions and goals and strategy for the new year, I've been thinking back about the quotes that have inspired me in the last few years, and Sherry and I want to share those with you so that you can start your New Year's thinking about the right things.
没错，我觉得 quotes 对我来讲它是一个蛮奇妙的东西。我觉得像很多 Instagram 了 right? A lot of Instagram pages, they would share quotes like every single day. 但对我来讲，我觉得 quotes 非常的有趣，它常常会去启发你，而且它可能还可以去安慰你。I like to collect quotes, 然后我每次看到我喜欢的，我都会把它存下来，或者我甚至把它当成我的手机的 screenshots. So that's something that I've always been doing. I don't know about you, but Nick, are you a quote person?
I like quotes. I always write down ones that I like or follow, but I don't think that I'm the kind of person like put them up on the wall, or I have a tendency to kind of let them go. When we were talking about doing the show, rather than go back and look for like my all-time favorite quotes, I just thought about authors or quotes that I've gotten in the last year that have really kind of made me think about how I want to handle the past year and going forward into the next year.
我觉得 quotes 还算是一个蛮好的一个工具来学习英文，因为通常它都还蛮短的，所以我觉得今天我跟 Nick 想要来分享一下我们喜欢的 quotes。那我也发现收集的 quotes 都还蛮有点 represent our personality， 所以你看到的会非常不一样。我的比较正面一点。
So why don't you start by sharing one of your more inspiring quotes, Miss Sherry?
Okay, so I'm going to just share one, and actually all of these quotes came from James Clear's newsletter. 那 James Clear 他是我一个非常喜欢的 author， 大家应该都知道《原子习惯》这一本书吧，讲了非常多次。那 James Clear 他本身也有一个 newsletter， 那如果大家有兴趣，其实也可以去 sign up， 因为它都是 free 的。那每个礼拜他都会有个 newsletter， 它的其中呢，他就会放很多，比如说每一个礼拜都有不同的一个 theme， 不同的一个主题。So I collected 3 of them. Let me share with you guys. So one of the things that it was actually from James himself, he said, double down on your best relationship. It's the investment with the highest return. 这个地方我想跟大家分享一下，什么叫做 double down? 那 double down 没有一定要 double 的意思。It's not always like you have to put twice as much as the amount, right? It's not always double. Just means that 你要加倍的用心在什么呢？就是你最好的一个关系，你的 relationship， 不管是同事之间啊、朋友之间，或者 romantic relationship， 这一些有最好的 ROI, return on investment. So that's mine. What about you?
So again, we're going to switch tones here a little bit to get into my quote. My first quote is actually from Mike Tyson, the boxer. And his quote is, "Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth."
It's a bit dark.
It sounds a bit dark. But the reason that I like this quote is because I think last year when we started the year, we talked about the difference between setting goals and setting intentions. And in the past year, I've been thinking a lot about what's the strategy behind a lot of businesses. And I've been reading a lot of good books. And the thought process is a lot of times when people are very goal-oriented or they set goals, things like COVID or certain personal issues or tragedies will really destroy all the goal setting that they have created. But that if you have built your year with intentions, and you can go back and listen to that podcast about the difference between goals and intentions, or you think about the strategy and logic. So notice, throughout our podcast, we always talk about the importance of having the logic behind your communication, not just different grammar rules or vocabulary rules. But this is to me, going back to that. There is actually an interview where they asked Mike Tyson where this came from. And he said, every time that I went into a fight, people would be like, okay, he does this. What are you going to do? He does that. What are you going to do? And he goes, there's always a plan until you actually start the fight. And that if you don't have the right training, you don't have the right mindset, you're not in the right place, your goals or your plan can be destroyed by someone just hitting you when you weren't ready for it. And so it sounds a bit dark, but it's really that thought process for me is how do you set intentions for a year? How do you set strategies for a year that even when you get a curveball, even when something comes and wrecks your year, you can still find a way to continue because your goals may have been shifted. But if your strategy is solid, you can continue going.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially I think, the curveball could just be COVID. I mean, the pandemic changes so much, right? It changes our business as well. 所以我觉得如果你今天只是设一个目标，好像我一定要达到这几分，或者是我一定要 KPI 是怎么样，但是中间有任何事情它发生了，而且是你不能够控制的事情它发生了， then your plan is completely ruined. So you really have to have that right intention.
Setting the intention, having a logic behind that the logic still fits even if the goals change, or a strategy of how to approach things.
Right. 那我也来一个比较稍微有点黑暗一点好了。So I'm going along with that. I like another quote that James also shared in his newsletter. This came from the Greek poet. I'm so going to butcher his name, so help me, Nick. Dinos Christianopoulos.
That's as close as I can get.
那他说了 They tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds. 我看到这个我真的觉得 Oh my God, 我真的觉得 I got fired up, right? 因为我在过去这2年中 of course 我可能在节目上从来没有跟大家分享这些，但是我在人生当中 personal 的一些 life 当中碰到了一些事情，那我觉得其实每个人都一样，你可能会碰到某一些人，他就是 they try really hard to beat you down. I think it's same with this quote. They try to bury us. 他想要把我们埋起来，但是他并不知道我们是种子， meaning that we're going to grow, we're going to make it better, and even if you buried us, thank you. Thank you for doing that, because that's just going to make us even stronger.
So, yes, I really like your inspiring quote of being buried and growing into seeds. And the thought process behind this is, again, maybe similar to what I was talking about, where when you have adversity, but if you have the right mindset, you can still actually come back stronger. And in the past year and going forward in the next year, I've been thinking a lot about how do we break our own cognitive biases? Essentially what it means is I think the past few years have split people into camps where they have not become more open-minded. They have doubled down on their positions in things. And I was listening to a very successful hedge fund manager. He's also a New York Times bestselling writer, and he's a professor of strategy in a very well-respected business school. And he has this quote that our minds have an amazing ability to create a narrative that explains the world around us, an ability that works particularly well when we already know the answer. On the surface, this sounds something about narrative or creative ability. But it actually goes back to something, if you listen to our book review, that Andrew talks about with super forecasters, which is when we incorporate new information, do we only accept information that continues to build on our own opinions and our own thought processes? Or do we take new information and use it to help us rethink our position or stance on this? And in the past few years, we have seen in the news and politics where people have become less willing to be open to new information and more determined to only take their point of view. And so I think with this quote by Michael J. Mobinson, it's actually that. You should actually be willing to be more open-minded and rethink your position rather than only decide to take in information that solidifies what you already think. So for 2022, this is one of the things where trying to read more, trying to take in more information, and if there is something that is counter to what I think, not try and break it down, but actually look at, is there a logic behind this? Is there a narrative behind this where this could also be true?
所以我觉得刚刚 Nick 讲的有一点让我想到那个大家应该都看了，或者是可能会在你的清单当中，就是那一部 Don't Look Up。It's a Netflix very popular show. Leonardo DiCaprio, Jennifer Lawrence, Meryl Streep. 那你就会看到这个就是我们现在的现象嘛。We believe what we believe, basically, right? 然后我们在吸取这种新的知识的时候，有的时候我们就自然 filter 掉那个我们本来不相信的东西，所以我们还是吸收到这个点是支持我的信念 so that's the only information I'll take it in. So I think that's what this quote is telling us, or trying to teach us, is that 当你在学习的过程当中，或者是你要做一些决定的过程当中，你要非常的小心去了解到底这件 new information 是不是能够让你学习，或者是甚至来改变你旧有的观念，或者你可能还是就像以前一样，你不想要吸收新的观念，你 still want to believe what you want to believe. It's a good lesson.
It's a good lesson. Kind of takes a lot of thought.
Yeah.
It's definitely there.
All right, I got a last one to share with you guys. This is by an author. 他的名字叫做 Karen Blixen. 那他专门在讲 the healing power of story. She said, all sorrows can be borne if you put them into a story or tell a story about them. 所以这个 quote 其实就在跟我们讲说，如果你能够把很悲伤的事情，你所学到的，就算它是很悲痛的事情，把它变成故事，或者是它变成一个很好的 lesson， 可以跟人家分享，那这个 sorrow 这个痛苦它是可以承担的，它是可以承受的。I really like it because I think we really suffered a lot for the past few years, 不管是 business 上面或者是 personal life 上面，所以我觉得把这种比较 negative 的东西，我们可以把它转换成 positive， 也就是透过跟人家分享，透过能够给不同的人有不同的一个提示吧 like and make it into some story to really inspire other people.
Yeah, I think this has a lot to do with how you frame the lessons that you learn in life. And some people will take certain adversity or certain tragedy, and they will frame that as something they want to forget or let go of. Whereas a lot of times there's a really strong lesson or something that you can get out of them to improve life or to make life better. And not to say that's easy.
Yeah.
But when it's done properly, that becomes part of the healing process or part of the growing process.
And I think, this gets a little personal, but you know what? I think 我们主管英文沟通有的时候还是要 personal 一点嘛 right? 我觉得有的时候自己在 healing 的过程当中，很多人都会叫你 let go, let go. But it's not that easy. You really have to find your own way to let it go. And sometimes letting it go, meaning that you have to transform that into something that it's a lessons that you learn or something that you can help others with. You know, it's not just like, oh, 我就把这一段感情或这一段事情把它丢掉. So I think everyone needs to find that healing that works for them.
The last quote that I wanted to share with everyone is actually, I think, a little more positive than my other ones on the outset. But this is by Naval Ravikant. Naval Ravikant is a billionaire venture capitalist. He started AngelList.co. He's probably been one of the earliest investors in most of the big companies that you may know or have heard of, tech companies in the last 10 years. But he did this really great interview with Tim Ferriss. And in that interview, he had this quote: "If I had always done what I was qualified to do, I'd be pushing a broom somewhere."
Okay, let's explain this. Pushing a broom somewhere. What does that mean?
Like, you would just be a janitor. You would just be like cleaning a floor.
Okay, cool.
But the thought process behind this, and when he's talking to Tim Ferriss, is that a lot of times we pin ourselves into our careers or our lives based on what we think we're qualified for or what other people think we're qualified for. Perhaps it has to do with your university degree. Perhaps it has to do with what your parents wanted you to do. Perhaps it has to do with, you know, what you think your strengths and weaknesses are. But the point is, a lot of very successful people, their education background, their career background, like what they became successful in, has nothing to do with their previous experience or their previous background. And so for him, he was like, I always found opportunities that on paper, if you just looked at my resume, I would not be qualified for. Like, I did not study to become a VC. And so I think a lot of times in our podcast, if you've ever listened to our resume, our CV, our executive summary, we talk a lot about what do you do when you want to kind of break the mold. You want to go somewhere else, do something else that doesn't look like you should be the ideal candidate. But there's a lot of things that we as people are capable of doing that is not about what our resume or education or career background was.
I think it's very true. 我觉得很多人可能都会掉进这种小圈圈，觉得我们大学学的什么科目啊，才能代表说我们现在工作能做什么。但是你会发现，你工作几年之后 ，that's just completely not true. I mean, how many successful people out there, you know, let's say successful entrepreneurs actually learn how to be an entrepreneur back in college, right? 我们大学没有这种课啊，如何创业，就算有这种课，并不代表你可以真的很成功的来创业。So I think sometimes just really step out of that comfort zone. I think that's what my takeaway from this quote. 也就是 step out of your comfort zone and then you look at things from a different angle every now and then. And I think it takes muscles to do. It's not so easy. It's not straightforward. But sometimes you just have to think of it from a different angle and see what you have learned all these years. And then you may be able to achieve something even better.
Yeah, and I think also we get sometimes tied up in the idea that successful entrepreneurs or successful people started when they were young because, you know, you hear a lot in the media of Mark Zuckerberg and Microsoft's Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, all these college dropouts who created these billionaire tech companies. But what you actually find is when you look back at the history of a lot of successful companies, there's multiple people, including, like, for example, TSMC's Morris Chen. He did not start TSMC until he was in his 50s or 60s.
That's inspiring. Yeah.
So it's one of those things that there's actually not an age gap on when you can transform or when you can decide to go after something different or something new.
要感谢大家让 Nick 跟我能够分享我们喜欢的一些 quote。 那当然其实我觉得我有很多啦，我大概有10几20个 quote 在我的手机上面。如果大家有兴趣的话，我们可以再隔个几个月我们再来做这个单元，我觉得会蛮有趣的。 So thank you so much guys for letting us share our favorite quotes and got a little bit personal. Really hope you guys have a great day and we'll talk to you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye. The Executive Plus podcast is a Presentality Group production, produced and hosted by Sherry Fang and Nick Howard. You can search us on Facebook, 主管英文 Executive Plus. You can also find us on Instagram, Communication R&D, and email us at sherry@epstyleplus.com.